morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, for most of my life, I was afraid to try. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of failure. Afraid that if I gave it my all, and it still wasn't enough, it would prove what I already feared deep down, that I wasn't worth much. But let me ask you this, what's a story without risk? You've never heard of a hero who played it safe? You've never seen a victory without a battle. You've never seen a mountain climbed by someone who stayed at the bottom wondering, what if I fall? I'm not talking about being reckless. I'm talking about having the courage to step out even when you don't have all the answers. Some of us are standing at the edge of a decision and fear is shouting louder than faith. But listen, if you don't take the risk, you'll never live the story you were born for. Maybe your risk is starting something new. Maybe your risk is letting go of the past. Maybe it's believing you're worth the chance, even if no one else does. Sometimes the loudest voice we hear isn't the one coming from the outside, it's the one echoing inside our own mind. That voice that whispers, you're not good enough, what if you fail, what will people say? And if we're honest, that fear doesn't just whisper, it screams. It drowns out our hopes, our potential, even the voice of truth that says we were made for more. Fear is often louder than faith. I remember moments in my life where I stood on the edge of a new opportunity, a new chapter, and I froze. Not because I didn't want it, but because I was terrified of what might go wrong. I thought, if I try and fail, it'll just prove what I've always feared, that I'm not capable, not worthy, not enough. Have you ever felt that? Like every time you try to move forward, something invisible pulls you back. The truth is, fear doesn't need facts to be loud. It just needs a little doubt. And once that doubt settles in, it multiplies. It convinces you that your past disqualifies your future. That your scars are proof you should seek this one out. That your brokenness means your story is over before it ever began. But here's what I've learned, just because fear is loud doesn't mean it's right. There's another voice, quieter, gentler, but stronger. The voice that says, you were made for this. There's more in you. Your story isn't finished. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just whispers, take one more step. And sometimes that's all it takes, just one. Fear loves comfort zones. It thrives in routine, in safety, in staying small. But purpose lies on the edge of risk. It lives in the place where you're uncertain, a little shaky, maybe even scared, but you move anyway. We think courage means not being afraid. That's not true. Courage means doing it afraid. It means standing in front of a giant with shaking knees, but not backing down. It means speaking up even when your voice trembles. It means applying for the job, starting the business, forgiving the person, walking out of the toxic situation, even when fear is shouting at full volume. If we wait for fear to disappear before we move, we'll never move, because fear will always have a reason for you to stay where you are. It will always find a what if. What if you fail? What if they laugh? What if you get rejected? But what if you fly? What if the very thing you're afraid of is the thing that leads you into your purpose? What if the risk you're scared to take is the doorway to the greatest chapter of your life? What if on the other side of your fear there's a version of you that you haven't even met yet, a version that's stronger, wiser, more free? That's why I say no risk, no story. No story, no gain. So today, even if fear is loud, let faith speak louder. So let purpose pull you forward. Let your future be louder than your past, because you were not created to live in the shadows of doubt. You were made to shine. You were made to rise. And your story, your real story, begins the moment you decide that fear doesn't get the final word. Most people live their entire lives waiting for the right moment. They wait until everything feels safe, until the plan is perfect, until the fear disappears. But here's the truth that took me years to understand: playing it safe never leads to purpose. You see, safety is comfortable. It's predictable. It doesn't challenge you. It lets you survive, but it rarely allows you to grow. And deep down, every one of us knows we weren't made just to survive. We were made to live with meaning, with passion, with purpose. But purpose doesn't live in the safety zone. It lives in the unknown, in the uncomfortable, in the place where you might mess up, where things might not go as planned, but where you discover what you're truly made of. I used to believe that if I stayed safe, I'd never get hurt. But staying safe also meant I stayed stuck. I wasn't failing, sure, but I wasn't becoming who I was meant to be either. I was existing, not living. And maybe you're there right now. Maybe you've gotten used to settling, telling yourself it's not so bad. I can manage. At least I'm not failing. But is that really the life you want? Or are you just afraid to step out because you don't know what might happen? Purpose asks more from you than comfort ever will. It asks you to believe before you see, to act before you feel ready, to move even when everything inside you is screaming, stay safe. But if you only ever follow comfort, you'll never know the beauty of discovering what's on the other side of risk. No one ever fulfilled their purpose by standing still. No great story ever began with, and then I decided to play it safe. Your story, your real story is waiting to be written. But you've got to turn the page. You've got to leave the familiar and step into the unknown. And yes, it's scary. Yes, there's a chance it won't go how you imagine, but there's also a chance it will go even better. Playing it safe might protect you from failure, but it will also protect you from growth, from joy, from impact. Purpose doesn't need perfection. It just needs your yes. That willingness to show up, to try, to give it everything you've got, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. And maybe that's the whole point. You don't need a guarantee to live with purpose. You just need the guts to move. Because comfort zones don't create world changes. Safety doesn't write powerful stories. And no one remembers the person who almost tried. So if you're standing at the edge of something that scares you good, that means you're close to something meaningful. Don't let safety steal your story. You were made for more. We're so afraid of failing that we often miss the truth. Failure is part of the story, not the end of it. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that failing means we're not good enough. That if we mess up, fall short, or take a wrong turn, we've ruined our chances of ever becoming something great. But that's not true. Failure isn't final. It's not a period, it's a comma. It's a chapter, not the whole book. I've failed more times than I can count. The first tried things that didn't work. I've poured my heart into something and watched it fall apart. I've made mistakes that I wish I could take back. But every time I've failed, I've gained something that success could never teach me. You don't learn to be strong by getting everything right. You learn by falling and getting back up. You learn by discovering that even at your lowest, even when nothing seems to be going your way, you are still standing. You're still breathing. You're still here. And as long as you're here, your story is still being written. Failure teaches us resilience. It builds our character. It humbles us in the best way and reminds us that we're human. But it also shows us how powerful we are when we decide not to give up. Some of the greatest people in history were people who failed, not once, but over and over again. What made them great wasn't that they avoided failure, it was that they refused to let failure define them. We need to stop seeing failure as the opposite of success. It's not. Failure is the classroom that success is born in. Every no you hear, every closed door, every setback, those are the moments that shape your strength. They're the parts of your story that make it worth telling. Have you ever watched a movie where everything goes perfectly for the main character? Probably not. Why? Because it's boring. There's no struggle, no risk, no breakthrough. What moves us are the moments when someone falls flat and chooses to rise again. That's what makes a story powerful. That's what makes your story powerful. So if you failed recently, good. That means you're trying. That means you're in the arena. That means you're doing something that matters. And maybe you're thinking, but I've failed so many times, I don't know if I can get back up again. Let me tell you something you can. Not because it's easy, not because it doesn't hurt, but because there's something inside you that's stronger than every failure you've ever faced. Don't bury your failures. Don't be ashamed of them. Use them. Let them teach you. Let them remind you that your story is still unfolding, and let them push you to keep going. Because the people who leave the biggest impact aren't the ones who had a smooth ride there. They're the ones who were knocked down and stood up again and again and again. So if you've fallen, don't stay there. Get back up. Dust yourself off and keep writing your story. Failure isn't the end, it's the beginning of something greater. We often wait for the perfect moment to begin. We tell ourselves things like, I'll start when I'm ready, when I have more confidence, when the fear goes away, when the timing is right. But what if I told you that day might never come? What if I told you that you must move before you feel fully ready? The truth is, most people never feel ready. No matter how much they prepare, there's always a little voice in the back of their mind asking, what if you're not enough? What if you're not prepared? What if you fail? And if you listen to that voice long enough, you'll stay stuck in the same place, watching life pass you by, watching others' lives, the kind of story you only dream about. But let me ask you this. What if readiness isn't a feeling, but a choice? I've learned that some of the biggest breakthroughs in my life happened when I stepped out even though I was afraid. Even when my heart was pounding. Even when the doubts were screaming louder than my courage. I didn't feel ready. But I moved anyway. And every step I took, even the shaky ones, built something inside me: confidence, clarity, strength. If I had waited until I felt fully prepared, I would have missed so many life-changing moments. I would have missed the people I've been able to encourage. I would have missed the opportunities to speak, to grow, to live a story far beyond what I imagined. You don't need to have all the answers to take the first step. You just need the faith to believe that the path will become clearer as you walk it. That's how purpose works. It's not about having the full map before you begin. It's about trusting that the next step will reveal itself as you go. And yes, it's scary. There's risk involved. You might get it wrong. You might have to learn as you go. But isn't that the point? Growth happens in motion, not in waiting. You find your voice while you're speaking. You find your strength while you're standing. You find your purpose while you're walking toward it, not sitting on the sidelines analyzing every detail. So many people are waiting for a feeling they think will suddenly make them bold. But boldness doesn't come before the step, it comes after. It comes from doing it afraid. From stepping up when everything in you says step back. That's where transformation begins. You might be thinking, but what if I'm not good enough? You are. What if I fail? Then you learn. What if I get rejected? Then you grow. But what if you succeed? What if the moment you've been waiting for is waiting on you to move? Don't let fear keep you in preparation mode forever. You were not created to stay in the background of your own life, waiting for perfection. You were created to live boldly, to move with courage, to write a story that begins the moment you say, I may not feel ready, but I'm going anyway. Because in the end, purpose doesn't wait for perfect timing, it waits for your decision to take the first step. Sometimes we believe that in order to make a difference, we have to do something massive, something groundbreaking, world-changing, headline-worthy. But the truth is, small risks lead to big victories. It's not always the giant leap that changes your life, it's the tiny, quiet decision to try. The whisper in your heart that says, just take one step. When I look back at my own journey, it wasn't one huge moment that changed everything. It was a series of small risks, saying yes when I wanted to say no, choosing to speak when I wanted to stay silent, reaching out when I could have held back. Each moment on its own didn't seem like much, but over time, those small decisions built something powerful. You don't have to wait until you feel brave enough to climb the whole mountain. Just take the first step up the hill in front of you. Sometimes we get overwhelmed because we're trying to see the whole staircase, but you only need to find the courage to step onto the first one. That's how stories are built, one small act of courage at a time. Maybe your small risk is starting a conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's applying for something even though you don't feel qualified. Maybe it's waking up tomorrow and choosing to believe you're worth it even when the voices of doubt are loud. It doesn't have to be flashy. It just has to be real and consistent. That's the beautiful thing about small risks, they compound. Like seeds planted in the ground, they don't sprout overnight, but they grow. You might not see the change at first, but something is happening beneath the surface. Every small risk you take builds your strength. It builds your confidence. It shapes your character. And yes, it's still scary. Even small steps can feel big when your heart's on the line. But those are the steps that matter the most, the ones that push you just outside your comfort zone. The ones that whisper, you can do this even when your knees are shaking. You don't need to be fearless to take a small risk, you just need to be willing. Sometimes we wait for the big door to swing open, not realizing that it's the small keys in our hands that unlock it. It's easy to look at other people's victories and think they got there in one big moment. But what you don't see are the countless little decisions they made when no one was watching. The moments they chose faith over fear, effort over excuses, progress over perfection. So if you're standing at the edge of a small decision, don't underestimate it. Don't wait for it to feel big enough or important enough. If it stretches you, if it scares you just a little, if it moves you closer to your purpose, then take it. Because the truth is, big victories don't come from doing one thing once, they come from doing the right thing over and over, even when it's small. That's how your story grows. That's how your life begins to shift. Not overnight, but step by step, decision by decision, moment by moment. So don't wait for the big break. Take the small risk. Give your yes to the little things. Because in the end, it's those small, brave steps that lead you to the biggest, most beautiful victories. There's something powerful waiting for you, something greater than fear, deeper than failure, bigger than comfort. It's not found in playing it safe, not found in hiding, not found in staying small. It's found in the very place we're often afraid to go. Your story is waiting on the other side of your fear. We all have a story we want to live, a dream buried inside, a version of ourselves we hope to become. But many of us never reach it because we allow fear to be the author. We let fear decide what chapters get written, what dreams are pursued, and which ones stay locked in the drawer. We tell ourselves maybe one day when I feel braver, when things calm down, then I'm stronger. But the truth is your story doesn't start the day fear disappears. It begins the moment you stop letting fear hold the pen. Fear has a way of building walls around our potential. It convinces us to sit down when we were born to stand up. It tells us to be quiet when we have something to say. It whispers, don't try, you'll just fail again. Don't hope, you'll only be disappointed. And if we're not careful, we begin to live in the background of our own lives, watching, waiting, shrinking. But that's not where your story belongs. Your story was made to be bold. It was made to move people. It was made to shine. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real, raw, honest. Full of ups and downs, triumphs and tears. That's what makes it beautiful. That's what makes it worth telling. And yes, stepping into your story is risky. Yes, there's a chance you might fall. You might be misunderstood. You might have to start over. But that's part of the journey. That's part of what makes the victory worth it. No great story was ever written without a little fear and a lot of courage. Think about the people who've inspired you most. Were they fearless? Probably not. They just decided that their purpose was greater than their fear, that their message mattered more than their insecurity, that their calling was stronger than their comfort zone. They didn't let fear erase their voice. They chose to speak anyway. And now it's your turn. There's a version of you on the other side of your fear that you haven't met yet. A version who's bolder, kinder, more confident. A version who knows how to rise after falling. Who knows what it means to trust again, try again, dream again. But you'll never meet that version if you keep playing small. You'll never live that story if you keep letting fear decide what happens next. It starts with a choice. A single moment where you say enough, enough with the excuses, enough with the waiting, enough with letting fear have the final say. You don't have to know how it all ends. You just have to take the next step. Because the story you're meant to live is too important to leave unwritten. Your voice is too needed to stay silent. Your gifts are too valuable to be buried by fear. The world doesn't need a perfect version of you. It needs the true version. The one who shows up flaws and all with a heart willing to grow, to serve, to love, to lead. So today, let this be the turning point. Let this be the chapter where you stop running from fear and start running toward your purpose. Your fear might still be there, but it doesn't have to be in control. You do. The story waiting on the other side of your fear, it's not just about you. It's about the lives you'll touch, the hope you'll bring, the legacy you'll leave. And all of it begins the moment you decide to step forward. Not when you feel ready. Not when it's easy. But now, today, because no risk means no story, and no story means no gain. My friend, if there's one thing I hope you take from all of this, it's that your story matters not someday, not when everything is perfect, but right now. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be willing. Willing to take a risk. Willing to rise after the fall. Willing to believe that something beautiful is waiting for you on the other side of your pain, your fear, your doubt. Every step you take, no matter how small, is a step toward purpose. Every time you say yes to courage over comfort, you add another powerful page to your story. And I promise you the world needs your story. Not a polished, perfect one, but the real, messy, powerful one that only you can live. So take the risk. Embrace the climb. Be proud of every scar, every setback, every moment you chose to keep going. Because in the end, no risk, no story, and no story, no gain. Thank you for giving your heart the space to listen. I believe in you. I'm cheering for you. Now go write the story only you can write. Good luck and thank you from the bottom of my heart